I want to call this one Washington, D.C. Police State. By now, I'm sure most, if not all of you, have either heard or seen reports about what President Trump did to the people and the government of Washington, D.C. over the last 2 or 3 days.
President Trump has sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C., citing violent crime. But here's the twist. The city just recorded its lowest crime levels in over 30 years. So why the show of force when the numbers tell a different story? Is it political? Given D.C.'s large black population, is it racism? Our trusted political analyst, Wolf Respond, will answer these questions. Stay tuned as we uncover the real reason President Trump deployed the National Guard.
All right, let's take a look at this. What was the excuse given by the president? And I say excuse because he doesn't do this normally. Presidents don't do this except in very extreme circumstances. That's why it happens very rarely. So what was Mr. Trump's reason or excuse? His answer, very simple: to combat the awful crime. And he had half a dozen horrible adjectives to attach to the terrible crime.
According to 2024 statistics, here are the top 5 most dangerous states by combined violent and property crime, and Washington, D.C. isn't on the list. 1. New Mexico. Violent crime rate of 749 per 100,000. Property crime rate of 2,887 per 100,000. 2. Violent 474 per 100,000. Property 2,879. 3. Louisiana. Violent 548. Property 2,630. 4. Tennessee. Violent 628. Property 2,362. 5. Arkansas. Violent 620. Property 2,229.
Now, right away, your suspicions should be raised because when politicians talk about crime, it's usually an excuse that the real reason they're doing something is something a lot of people wouldn't like, but they say it's crime because they hope everybody wants to be down on crime and up on public safety. So let's take a look. There are 2 sources of statistics for the level of crime in Washington, D.C., the Metropolitan Police Department of that city and the FBI. Both of them, and let me be real clear, both of them agree, both of the sources of statistics, that crime has been going down over the last 18 months, not up. It was at a bad level in 2023, they say, but in 2024, before Mr. Trump became president again, it was really well contained. According to the FBI, crime dropped 9%. According to the police, over 30%. These are very large, very dramatic improvements. Clearly, the people of Washington and their police department and their mayor were doing a pretty good job. Number 2, other cities in America have much worse crime statistics than Washington, D.C. If you're going to do this, why Washington? Well, it's a little harder, in the others, because there the mayor is responsible to the governor, and the president might have confronted the opposition of mayor and governor. The way he did when he tried to do the same thing in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. But Washington, D.C. is denied a governor under American law. They don't have senators either. They don't have a congressional representative. And when you think about it, that ought to make the people of Washington, D.C. rather angry. Why? Well, let me give you just 2 examples. Both the state of Wyoming and the state of Vermont have fewer people, fewer American cities living in them than does Washington, D.C. But both Wyoming and Vermont have two senators sitting in the Senate and at least one congressional representative. Washington has none of that, even though they have more people. What possible reason is there for this? Well, one of the suggestions made by political scientists looking at this situation is that Washington, D.C. used to have a majority of Black residents and still has a very large African American community. And that probably means that if they got two senators and they got a representative like Vermont and Wyoming have, that those would probably be liberal Democrats. And that's why the Congress hasn't allowed them to have the democracy we're so supposed to believe we live in. But I've just begun to look at this. I want to look at it in another way. Did the leaders of Washington, D.C. ask for the government's help? No. Have they made clear their feelings about this? Yes. Unprecedented, the mayor said. Unnecessary, many others said. Why in the world do you not sit down with the mayor of this city, with the police department, with the elected representatives, and talk about a program to develop to deal with the crime problem? That would be the normal, but this isn't about crime. This is about Mr. Trump pandering to his political base. The white president against a community's crime problem, which is presented to most Americans as if it were the community's Black crime problem. So you can appeal to white supremacists, can't you? To prejudice against the North, to prejudice of all kinds. What is going on here? Why choose Washington? But now let me take it to another step, because it's a place other commentators will be afraid to go. There is something very like ICE going on here. ICE is a very dramatic idea, a whole new federal police force under the control of the president himself and a couple of people he delegates his powers to. And they are displaying rough tactics, grabbing children, grabbing women, grabbing people who have been working for decades, paying their taxes, performing all the duties of an American citizen. They don't care if you've got a record, no matter what it is, if they've got some papers on you, no matter what they are. That's why they make so many mistakes. That's why they get caught arresting the wrong people, imprisoning the wrong people, deporting the wrong people. It's a scandal. And why do I bring it up? Because it's done for the theater of it all. If you really wanted to stop immigration, or at least slow it down, reduce it, let's suppose that the people of America really want that. Polling recently indicates they don't, but let's assume they do, the way Mr. Trump wants us to believe that he's carrying out his mandate. Well, then let's talk a little bit about it. How much money have the Congress, controlled by President and the Republican Party, which dominates both houses, how much money has been allocated to ICE, to this agency that is basically a police and deportation operation? The answer is, and I looked it up to have it correct for you, $170 billion between now and 2029. That is over the next 4 years, give or take. That's an enormous amount of money. 170 billion. To give you an idea how gross this is, I went and looked up the question, how much foreign aid is given by the United States to all of South America, of Latin America? I picked Latin America because that's where most of the immigrants coming into the United States over the last 10 years, that's where they come from. How much money does the government give to help South America? Well, in the last fiscal year 2024, under Mr. Biden, the total grants of the State Department and USAID came to $2 billion. So let me be clear. What we give to Latin America, which has significantly more people living in it than in the United States, to help them with their problems, economic problems, climate problems, political problems, $2 billion. How much are we spending to catch them, to capture them, to imprison them, to deport them? 170 billion. All right, let me tell you something as a professional economist. If we took half the money we're giving to ICE and made it available to those communities which send the most people to the United States as immigrants, and we know who they are. We know which countries the immigrants come from. We know exactly which countries to go to provide them with the economic supports, the jobs, the opportunities to start businesses, whatever you want, a program to help those people. They don't want to leave their country of origin, leaving behind what few possessions they have, leaving behind the culture they know, the religion they follow, the family they're linked to, the neighborhood. Come on. Nobody wants to do that unless they're under terrible pressure. And when you ask the immigrants, they tell us. They tell us either it's unsafe, there's war or bandits or that kind of problem, or it's too poor. It can't sustain people. I can't make a living on my farm, in my job. Well, as I said, half of 170 billion, that's what we're giving the ICE, half of that focused on those areas from which the immigrants mostly come, would give them a chance and a reason to stay there, which they would rather do because they have the resources, if we help them, to do that. And half of what we're now wasting on ICE, we wouldn't have to waste. It would save the government half of $170 billion. That's a lot. That's a really nice tax cut for Americans because the government wouldn't need it, because they wouldn't need to spend half of 170 billion on ICE, because the other half had actually solved the immigration problem in a much better, much more humane, as well as cheaper way. Why isn't the president talking to us about that? Why isn't the president trying to get Congress to debate it? They would have a sizable number of people right away would support that. And the majority of Americans would celebrate doing that as it saves us money rather than funding ICE, whose reputation gets worse with each passing day. ICE is a theater of Mr. Trump's to look like Mr. Tough Guy. Taking over the police of Washington is a theater of Mr. Trump trying to look like Mr. Tough Guy. Don't be fooled. This is not a solution to any problem, what he does. Real solutions like the sort I've just sketched out, and I took only 5 minutes to do it, are not what he trades in. He trades in a theater designed to get his base to keep voting with him in the hopes that what he's talking about is not the screaming BS that it actually is. If interventions on urgent topics like this strike you as useful, if there are points made here that you think it's worth friends, neighbors, representatives would benefit from thinking about, then please share this video with them in whatever way you can. That's why we make them. And of course, if you can help us cover the costs of doing it, donations would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.